better left unknown, and I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner. Is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner. Is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion? I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
Ripon Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests, are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Ripon Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy.
Multiverse broadcasting system initiated. Multiverse connection established.
Hello.
Multiverse connection secure.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
This is My Life DIY, and
hi, this is JoJo.
Hi, my name is Ash.
Hey everybody, it's AJ the Ripon Rabbit.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light.
And you're now listening
to Dark Wolf's Den.
The Dark Wolf's Den Show on Ripon Common Sense Radio.
Are ghosts real?
We had 1,000 hours of continuous communication with the spirit world.
Does time travel actually exist?
The laws of physics seem to be compatible with time machines.
You know, sometimes I wonder about reincarnation, don't you?
A 4-year-old boy in Adelaide, Australia, has told his parents that he used to be Britain's Princess Diana.
What would happen if the world found out that aliens were real?
I didn't say disclosure would be easy, but what is the alternative?
To establish a space force as the 6th branch of the armed forces.
We have so many questions and yet so little time, so to have you here, the pleasure is all mine.
Coming to you from a secret cave, hidden deep within the wilderness. This is the Dark Wolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and we are broadcasting live across the multiverse from a secret cave, hidden deep within the wilderness of Tennessee. That's right, we're ripping through the electromagnetic soup, tearing through the atmosphere, and tunneling away into your radio like a quantum particle. This is the Dark Wolf's Den Show for Wednesday, September the 29th, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are covering yet another state of mystery in this great union that we call the United States of America. Tonight we are covering the great state of Iowa. That's right. It really makes me wonder what we're going to uncover, because you don't hear a whole lot about that state. That's one of those little quiet ones, and the quiet ones are always the craziest, right? Anyway, we're going to talk about all that and more coming up here in just a moment, but first let's go ahead and give a quick shout out to our chat here. And welcome everybody. It is such an honor and a pleasure to see you guys here over in the Ripon Rabbit Hole chat room. We're going to start off with Wizard Gren says, I wish you guys would get back to the more esoteric topics. Well, we will eventually make our way back there, that I assure you. As well as Michael Fontaine says, doesn't Iowa have a four-legged chicken? Nobody knows what it tastes like because nobody can catch it. I've never heard of the four-legged chicken, but that's interesting. I'd be willing to bet it tastes like chicken. I'd almost put money on it. JoJo's dropping into the Ripon Rabbit Hole chat. So glad to see her over there. Go ahead and refresh to the live chat now. Sandy B hopping in the Ripon Rabbit Hole over here, as well as Catherine M says, hi everyone. Hi, Catherine M. Terry Taggart saying hello over there. Raider Champion hopping in with the theme song. Appreciate that, Raider Champion. Over in the Dark Wolf's Den Show chat, you're going to hear some familiar names. We've got Sandy B once again says Iowa. There we go. Iowa, here we come. My hubby went to college at Storm Lake, Iowa. That's awesome. That is really cool. So you're kind of familiar with it already. Alva Yarder says hello. Hello, Alva Yarder. X-Gen evening, fellow travelers. We have the power to change this matrix. Be are all one. I think he meant we are all one, but either way, absolutely right. And evening X Gen, glad to see you here. My Life DIY dropping in over here. Glad to have you here, My Life DIY. Always a pleasure. Modern Fords, as well as Raider Champion, hopped over to say hello in the Dark Wolf's Den Show too. Lissa W says hello. Hello, Lissa. Always a pleasure. I'm so glad to see everybody here tonight, and I just can't say it enough. I love and appreciate seeing every last one of you folks over there. And we're going to dig into this state of mystery of Iowa here in just a moment, but before we do that, we do have two more fun little segments to do. The first of which we call Today in History. I love days like this when there's just so much to choose from on the Today in History. Like this one, for example. On this day in 1982, the first broadcast of the comedy Cheers premieres on NBC TV, starring Ted Danson and Shelley Long. I used to love watching that show. I remember Norm used to come in and everybody would yell, "Norm!" I actually lived in a neighborhood where I would go walking down the street and everybody would come out of their apartments yelling, "Jerry!" True story. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is today's segment of Today in History. And of course, I do not own or watch a TV anymore, but that was one show that I actually did enjoy watching when I did watch TV. I actually thought it was kind of cool. And speaking of cool, that brings us to our next segment, which we call Say What? And of course, in my opinion, one of the coolest segments of the whole show, right? On today's quote of the day, our quote comes from Abraham Lincoln. He says, "We the people are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who pervert the Constitution." End quote. Once again, that was Abraham Lincoln, and that is today's segment of Say What? Incredible information from former President Abraham Lincoln. And you know, we the people, we are in charge, and we are spread out all across this great land, from California to New York and Maine and Florida and every place in between, including the little bitty place of Iowa. That's right. Iowa has its fair share of people and cryptids. It's been having cryptid reports for many, many a year. Our first report, as a matter of fact, comes to us from 1903. This creature is called the Van Meter Visitor.
In the fall of this year, reports and accounts tell the tale of a cryptid. Over a series of nights, many respected, prominent men of the town, not your average town drunkards, reported sightings of a creature. This creature was said to look like a cross between a bat and a man. The reports say it emitted a foul odor wherever it went on its enormous smooth wings and shot a blinding light out of the horn on its head.
I don't know about you guys, but to me that seems eerily reminiscent of the Mothman creature, right?
Flying past anyone who saw it at similarly blinding speeds. It was first seen by U.G. Griffith, an implement dealer, right in the heart of the town's business district. Upon initial investigation, Griffith thought the phenomenon was a spotlight moving around a rooftop. As he fully awoke and got up to truly investigate the bizarre thing, he was annoyed and ready to confront whatever or whoever it was. As he approached the source of the blinding light, he saw something huge jump from the spot where the light was to a different rooftop across the street before completely disappearing into the crisp autumn night.
So he had just awoken and there was a spotlight in his eyes that had woken him to begin with, right? That's the whole reason that he had woken up. And he was assured himself, I guess you'd say, that this spotlight had come from a rooftop of some type, right? So when he woke up and got to looking and seeing something with this light attached to it dancing across the different rooftops, of course, I'm sure he was more than a little alarmed, right? And welcome both Catherine M. over into the Dark Wolf's Den Show. Long Reach 1, haven't seen you in a while, a pleasure to see you. And Royal Magnolia as well.
As the mysterious being was moving from one spot to another, Griffith fired off a few shots from his gun at the critter with seemingly zero effect. Bizarrely, Griffith was able to get his shots into his target, but even more bizarre was the fact that the animal was able to shrug off the bullets as though it were made of metal.
And this, of course, yet another example of something that we see in a lot of cryptid cases, and that is the fact that the bullets have little to no impact whatsoever. And that doesn't necessarily mean anything paranormal per se. It mentioned that it perhaps like it was made of metal. That's probably the quoting that was used, but a thick enough skin is definitely going to be resistant to many bullets. There's a reason that there's a need for something called an elephant gun, right?
The very next night, another member of the community, the town's doctor, Dr. Alcott, saw the creature. He was asleep in a room in his office when he was awoken by the same blinding light Griffith had seen the night before. Like Griffith, Dr. Alcott got dressed and rushed outside to confront whoever had the audacity to shine a light into his room. With a gun in hand, Alcott was taken aback as he got to witness what was making the light. He saw what he later described as an unholy combination between man and bat. He found the origin of the blinding light as a horn jutting out of the creature's forehead. Dr. Alcott took to shooting at the creature 5 times with no effect before it fled. The night after this encounter, it appeared again, this time to Clarence Dunn. At this point, rumors had begun circulating around the town of the creature's nightly visits, but no one had any idea what it could be. Dunn was aware of the appearances and took to keeping watch for it at night. He positioned at the bank with a shotgun as he believed the culprit of the Van Meter visitor was simply some clever burglars. Dunn's experience with the visitor, once it made its appearance, was a bit different from the others. Dunn heard a gagging, struggling sound like someone being strangled outside, which is what got him to get up and investigate, rather than the light which awoke past observers. As he went to open the door to check out the sound, he was blinded by the light.
Blinded by the light. Am I the only one that just got that triggered in your head? But seriously, guys, this is an interesting creature, right? Very intriguing indeed. The fact that this guy was a complete skeptic, right? 100% hands down skeptic, was sure that this was just some burglar or some kind of hoax either way, was quickly turned around when he ran upon this creature. And it still had the blinding light in front of it. We're listening to pretty much another account of the exact same creature. So we've had a number of case files so far on this one creature.
Once the creature let up on the visual noise, Dunn could make out a little bit of the critter's form. He reportedly took his gun and shot the beast a couple times to no effect. The next morning, he surveyed the crime scene with fresh eyes, only to find a set of 3-toed footprints, which he made plaster casts of.
And here we go, ladies and gentlemen. If you have followed this show for a while, you know that the 3-toed footprint is incredibly important. There are a load of cryptid creatures for some reason that tend to have this 3-toed footprint, including the one that I personally encountered. So when I hear something like that, as you guys know, that really raises my ears to the sky, because the 3-toed print is definitely something that is very unique indeed to cryptid creatures, for whatever odd reason, right?
Plaster casts which have never materialized over the last 100+ years. O.V. White, owner of a local hardware store, was another eyewitness. He was sleeping in his quarters above the hardware store when the creature woke him up with quite a start, as it perched atop a nearby telephone pole. At the time, across the street, Sidney Gregg had awoken and spotted the creature as well. Instead of assaulting its voyeurs with light or sound, it wafted a loud stench towards White. Supposedly, White and Gregg saw the animal make its way down to the ground and hopped around like a kangaroo before taking off towards the old coal mine, which resided on the outskirts of town. Let us not forget this was 1903, and people were not above a good old torch and pitchfork mob gathering. The men took up arms to rid the town of the beast, who'd yet to make any malevolent movements towards anyone who saw it. People had reported strange, scary sounds coming from the coal mine after all. What else was there to do? Leave the critter alone? The posse made their way to an old brickyard on the northwest side of town, where the group heard strange noises coming out of the coal mine.
Presently, the noise opened up again, as though Satan and a regiment of imps were coming forth for battle.
So said one of the eyewitnesses, as recorded in the Des Moines Daily newspaper. Upon reaching the abandoned coal mine, the men spotted the creature come out of the mine, alongside a smaller individual. 2 creatures. The creatures used their horns to create a blinding light that they used to get into the air and sail away. The men stayed where they were, disoriented, until the creatures returned the following morning. Apparently,
The reception they received would have sunk the Spanish fleet, but aside from unearthly noise and peculiar odor, they did not seem to mind it, but slowly descended the shaft of the old mine.
To keep the unknown away from the town, the mob bricked up the entrances to the mines, and this was the last time these creatures were seen, heard, or smelt from again.
And again, not out of the realm of possibility, in my opinion, that these creatures could have been living in the cave system. We know there's a lot, or the coal mine in this case, we know there's a lot of creatures that live in a lot of strange places. It would also explain the need for the light on the horn if it was an adaptation to a darker area, right? But what do you guys think? Go ahead, put a 1 in the chat room if you think this was definitely a real creature, or most likely a creature that did exist, though they are not found anymore since they closed off the mine. Go ahead, put a 2 in the chat room if you think, no, that's just a little bit far-fetched for you. And go ahead and put a 3 in the chat room if you're just kind of on the fence either way on this one. In the meantime, let's go ahead and move on over to a creature that is not so questionable, and that it would be, of course, our old friend, the Bigfoot. I've got just a couple of stories here, a couple of case files that we're going to go through of Bigfoots specifically in Iowa.
Dallas County, Iowa, 1999. I really don't know how to start. I came to your website after an encounter with a large creature resembling many definitions of Bigfoot. I was afraid no one would believe me until I came here. This happened between West Des Moines and Van Meter, Iowa, in Dallas County.
Darn, it almost seems like Van Meter is some kind of hot spot for these cryptid creatures. We have the Van Meter monster and the Bigfoots in the same area around Van Meter. Now, that's interesting, right? Speaking of the Van Meter monster, let's see what you guys said about it over there in the chat. Remember, 1 absolutely was a real case, a real creature. 2, I don't know, a hoax, definitely not real. 3, I definitely don't know. I'm really on the fence. Let's see what you guys said about this. Sorry about that. I lost that mute button again. I'm telling you, us DJs are horrible at the mute button. But seriously, over here in the Ripon Rabbit Hole chat, Raider Champion says 1.134. I really need to start studying my fractions just for you guys over here throwing these fractions out at me, right? But says most definitely real. Then we have... over here in the Dark Wolf's Den Show chat, we have Catherine M. says 3. Not sure. That's honest, Catherine. Then we've got My Life DIY with the 1. Absolutely real, without question. Sandy B with the 1, JoJo's with the 1, one's fallen down across the board here. Lisa W with a 3. Lissa says not all that sure either way. Appreciate the honesty, Lissa. Royal Magnolia with the 1. Dark Horse, great to see you. Dark Horse 108 with a 3. Absolutely. And we're glad to be of service. Royal Magnolia says she's had a really hard day, and first time she's been able to kick back and relax. So we're glad to have been of service there. And you remember where we left off a moment ago, the Van Meter area not only has the visitor, but it also has a case of a Bigfoot.
It happened around early July of 1999 at a campout with my friends. My house sits in front of a rather large patch of timber. Our freshman year of high school just got out for summer vacation, and we were celebrating in the timber at the campout. It was just getting dark outside, so we decided to build the fire. The 4 of us finished our supper and were sitting around the fire just talking. Soon it was pitch black outside and you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. We got out our flashlights and decided...
Alva Yarder coming in with the 1 over in the Ripon Rabbit Hole chat.
...to go to the tent we had set up earlier. The next thing that happened, I'm not really sure about what time it was, but it was still very dark out. We all woke up to the sound of rustling in the leaves. We assumed it was just a raccoon eating the leftover scraps of food, but then there was a strange grunting sound, sounding like some sort of sick cow or something, and heavy, raspy breathing. Also, there was a reeking stench, almost like rotten eggs.
One thing we do know about Bigfoot cases is that this is reported quite often, this foul stench in the area of a Bigfoot.
We all thought it was somebody playing a prank on us, but in the middle of the night? And how would they find us out in the middle of the woods? We all went out of the tent to look around, sure it was just nothing. As we unzipped the tent, the rustling stopped and the breathing slowed down a little. As we poked our heads out of the opening, we caught a glimpse of him. I still am not sure of what I saw that night. In proportion to the tree he was standing near when we saw him, his head came close to hitting the branch, which seemed to be a little less than 7 feet tall. He was hairy and had reddish-brown fur. Once the four of us talked about what we saw, we all had seen the same thing, a glimpse of him walking away. I think he seemed maybe a little afraid of us. For what reason I do not know. He was too far away to distinctly see his eyes. All I can tell you is that we only saw his backside, reddish-brown fur, and very tall. As for the food he could have been attracted to, we had leftover bags of potato chips, hot dogs and buns, s'mores, chocolate bars, graham crackers, marshmallows, some fresh fruit, apples, bananas, oranges. I can't think of anything else at this moment, but just general snacks and food for open campfires.
Honestly, that sounds like enough food to attract every animal in the entire forest, right? But we do know that Bigfoot does have a tendency to like apples.
His body was pretty strange as to the proportion question. Big hands, most likely big feet too. Tall and large biceps and upper leg muscles from what I could tell, and long hair covered his whole body from what we could see. I can't remember a lot more about this creature. He, or she, I suppose, seemed very frightened at the sight of humans. He wasn't afraid of the campfire, it seemed, although it was just smoke by this time. My guess is that he was attracted to the fruit, most likely. The fruit was the strongest smelling piece of food we had.
You know, what amazes me is more times than not, these Bigfoot cases have no violence attached to them, right? Generally, the Bigfoot is more scared of the human than the human is of the Bigfoot. And I find that intriguing because a lot of people claim that these are bears, right? It's just a bear sighting. I don't know if anybody who is claiming this has ever dealt with a bear, but those guys don't just turn around and walk off on 2 legs, first off. Second off, they don't just turn around and walk off if they found a huge meal. They will invade a camp. They don't care about the puny human there. Generally speaking, they won't run unless you have something like a bear spray, right? So these Bigfoot encounters being bears that just got thwarted, I just don't buy it. Again, these creatures seem much more scared of humans than humans are of them.
Clinton County, outside of Folletts, Iowa, October 2006. This is a farming community
Audio. Here we go. It looks like my microphone has decided to come back. I don't know what in the world's going on. Our whole system just pretty much crashed here. We locked up. Bear with me just a moment while we get this back on track. I think we've got audio coming out now. At least somewhere we do anyway. Audio. Yeah, I'm trying to get everything pulled back up. I do apologize, guys. Like I said, my whole system just straight up crashed on me. One of the wonders of live radio, right? Anybody wondering if I'm live? Here we go. That is without question. So it's going to take just a couple moments to try to pull everything back together. I appreciate everybody's patience. I would like to, for a moment, speak on the fact that that creature a moment ago, the Van Meter monster, was a three-toed monster. States, or we've heard this three-toe many. Really incredible to me that they keep coming up, right? Yeah, I do appreciate it, guys. You can hear me now. Perfect. I am so glad that we've got the audio rolling through there. Let me go ahead and try to, yeah, we're definitely crashing hard over here. We're going to try to get back on. Give us just do apologize. We're going to have some dead air for a moment. Not quite understanding why. Let me see if we can get this back up. You guys are so very patient. I do so sincerely. Well, it looks like we're at halftime, ladies and gentlemen. I am glad to see everyone here at halftime. We have an incredible weekend coming up for you folks. On tomorrow, I will be back with a all new episode on the end of the world, right? We're going to go over all the different ways. Dead air again. Okay, let's hope we don't. We're going to be going over all of the different predictions that have been given for the end of the world, right? And then on Friday, October 1st, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, our buddy AJ the Ripon. Make sure you come on back and check that out on Friday, October the 1st, kicking off the weekend here on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network in the Ripon Rabbit Hole. Or the month, I'm sorry. I kicked the weekend off. He is kicking off the month. And then on Saturday, he will be back with an all-new episode, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, October the 2nd, talking about donating your body to science. There's a lot of people who have chosen to do that, myself not being one of those people, of course. And we are going to be discussing all of that on Saturday. Our AJ will be discussing with it on Saturday, October 2nd, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, and 9 Central. Then on Sunday, the best show on radio, ladies and gentlemen, the most fun you can have on radio. I know that for a fact, and that is the Ripon Rabbit Hole. to Beat Eugene show. That's right. He will be back with an all-new episode of Beat Eugene. Nobody beat Eugene last month, and we're going to do our best to try to beat him this month. I know there's a coalition of you guys out there that are more than willing and ready to whoop Eugene into the ground, right? I hope to see all of you guys over there on Sunday, October the 3rd, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 Central, right? Then on Tuesday, the following Tuesday, of course, AJ will be back with an all-new episode, I'm sorry, AJ. I'm doing this like off the cuff. Bear with me, guys. On Tuesday, our friend Champion Sports Nation will be back to kick off Tuesday night videos, the once-a-month show that we do in the Backstage Lounge once a month, every month, and we hope to see every last one of you guys there. With that said, we now will return, hopefully, to the second half of the Dark Wolf Den Show right here on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network. Rabbit Hole. Reestablishing multiverse connection. Connection reestablished and secure.
This is My Life DIY, and
Hi, this is JoJo.
Hi, my name is Ash.
Hey everybody, it's AJ the Ripon Rabbit.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light.
And you're now listening
to Dark Wolf's Den.
The Dark Wolf's Den Show on Ripon Common Sense Radio.
If you were meant to be controlled, you would have come with a remote, but you didn't. And that's why you listen to the Dark Wolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and welcome back to the second half of the Dark Wolf's Den Show for Wednesday, September 29th, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just tuning in tonight, welcome. We are discussing the great state of mystery of Iowa. That's right. There has been a bit of a cryptid situation in Iowa. We had the Van Meter monster as well as a couple Bigfoot stories. It seems Bigfoot likes the Iowa area. And another thing that we have in Iowa, as we have in every state in the Union, is a good list of ghost stories. That's right. And as we are coming up on Halloween, it's only fitting that we do the second half, of course, each show as ghost stories, as we always do anyway. But now we're coming up on Halloween, it's actually fitting, right? But seriously, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the hauntings of Iowa.
The Jordan House. Construction on the Jordan House in West Des Moines began in 1850 and took several years to complete, replacing the log cabin that James Jordan...
I do apologize for those that were over on Ripon at Common Sense Radio. I do hope you're still hanging here with us. We've got that back up and running too now.
And his family had originally built in the same spot. The Jordan family lived in the home for nearly a century, with their daughter Ida even dying in the house after falling down the stairs and breaking her neck.
But this would not be the last time people would hear from the daughter.
Many have reported feeling a ghost in the home, hearing disembodied children's footsteps, and tiny giggles from dark rooms. A ghostly little girl has been sighted on several occasions, rounding corners and peering out from beneath furniture.
You know, as heartbreaking and tragic as stories like that are, the fact that the ghost remains does bring a bit of hope about what could happen on the other side, right?
Hotel Blackhawk. Hotel Blackhawk in Davenport was built in 1915 and has played host to many notable names throughout history.
I am also now convinced that every single state has a haunted hotel of some type too, right?
And was even the final stay of actor Cary Grant, who fell ill and died here. Guests and employees report cold spots throughout the halls, lights turning on and off, and the sounds of phantom piano music coming from the ballroom when it's empty. Woman in an evening dress that changes from blue to red in an instant.
To me, that sounds just as cool as it does scary, right? The dress that changes colors on its own. But there's a more famous ghost that may actually haunt this hotel too.
And the ghost of Cary Grant himself has been sighted walking the halls, dressed in a fancy suit with a smile on his face.
And the way I understand it, Cary Grant still frequents the place to this day.
The Matthias Ham House. The Matthias Ham House in Dubuque was built in 1856 for businessman Matthias Ham and his family, of which at least 4 of the members died within the home.
And as if that weren't bad enough,
Sarah, the remaining daughter, also shot and killed an intruder who turned out to be a pirate Matthias had testified against.
So now not only do we have natural death spirits, we have the possibility of the stone tape replay because of the trauma of the final event, although that could be a spiritual one too. Either way, we find that trauma generally tends to precede any ghost activity. So this story definitely has the makings for quite a few ghost encounters.
Visitors to the home have reported issues with electronics, windows opening on their own, cold spots, disembodied voices, and a ghostly lamplight that can be seen floating around the edges of the property, especially on foggy nights.
And perhaps the light would be the pirate looking for his body. But anyway, what do you guys think? Do you think I'm right that trauma definitely has an action or a function in creating a haunting activity? Or do you think it's just the fact that, you know, everybody dies and a lot of times it is traumatic? Go ahead, put a 1 in the chat room if you think a traumatic situation creates a more likelihood of a haunting situation. Go ahead, put a 2 in the chat room if you think no, totally unrelated, it's just a coincidence, and put a 3 in the chat. Sorry about that, had to sneeze. And go ahead and put a 3 in the chat room if you're unsure either way.
The Porterhouse Museum. The Porterhouse Museum in Decorah was built in 1867 and adopted by Adelbert Field Porter and his wife, Grace Young Porter, in 1904 after their wedding. The couple, along with Grace's parents, lived in the home until their deaths, and it's believed their spirits may remain. They're believed to be friendly apparitions, however, with staff and guests reporting finding locked doors unlocked and ajar, playful taps on the shoulder, and several figures seen watching from the upstairs window, bunched together and looking quite content.
So this definitely sounds like a more positive style haunting, more like the one that I grew up with myself. But let's go ahead and check the chat over here and see what you guys said. Remember, the question was, do you think trauma has an impact on a haunting? 1 in the chat room if you think most definitely it has a major impact. 2 in the chat room if you think nope, absolutely not, it's a complete coincidence. And 3 in the chat room if you're unsure either way. Let's go ahead and see what you guys said over there. It looks like Catherine M. says 1 absolutely can. Sandy B says 1 it can definitely cause a haunting trauma. Being involved with the case. My Life DIY with the 1 over there. Most definitely she agrees. Royal Magnolia 4. Sorry, I think they're all demons, and that's fair. Maybe I should have added that on to the end, right? Alva Yarder with the 1. It can happen, absolutely. Darlene, Maggie, I do hope one of those was correct. With a 1 also. And let's move on to our next case file.
Simpson College.
Michael Fontaine says 1 depends on what happened.
Simpson College in Indianola was established in 18...
Raider champion with the 1.1 over there. Most likely, most definitely, little hair, a hint of doubt, but most likely absolutely real, in that being the case that trauma does have an effect on creating a haunting scenario.
1960, with the old chapel, now College Hall, rumored to be haunted by 3 separate entities. The first 2 are a young man and a young woman, both believed to be students that took their own lives. The third is a 22-year-old named Millie who tripped on the stairs and fell from the 3rd floor.
And again, we have this extremely traumatic event.
Students and faculty have reported unexplainable cold spots, odd noises coming from empty rooms, electronics malfunctioning, lights refusing to stay on, and personal items disappearing from locked areas.
All of which are classic examples of a haunting, and I'm starting to wonder if these more traumatic ones are the ones that have different aspects to them, like the cold spots that we haven't heard in all the stories, but when they are mentioned, they're definitely intriguing.
Sioux City Municipal Auditorium. Sioux City Municipal Auditorium in Sioux City was designed in 1938, constructed in 1950, and now stands as the Long Lines Family Recreation Center. Local legend, backed by historical accounts, state that an electrician died during construction, and it's said his spirit never moved on. Multiple visitors have reported seeing an electrician in old-timey clothing tinkering with various switches across the premises.
I honestly think this is a version of the stone tape theory, and the reason I think so, I just don't see myself liking my job so much in the living that I would like to continue to do it all the time while I was dead, especially just the last job I was at, right? It seems pretty random. If I were a ghost, I would definitely be moving around, visiting others in which that I could. So, very interesting here. Again, I think this is more of what we would call a stone tape haunting than a regular spiritual haunting. That is, of course, just my opinion.
Also reported as the ghost of a little boy who fell over the edge of the building while shooting pigeons. Many have reported hearing little footsteps accompanied by extreme cold spots and the sound of little disembodied cries. He has been sighted several times in the auditorium, watching shows.
And once again, we have this extremely traumatic event, as well as cold spots in this story. So I just can't help but wonder if they're connected, but definitely a connection with the trauma, in my opinion, as far as hauntings go. I'm not sure if the aspects of the haunting might match out to such, but definitely upon more study, we may be able to find even more patterns in these cases. But speaking of cases, let's get back to these.
Iowa State University. Iowa State University in Ames was founded in 1856 and is one of the few colleges in the U.S. to play host to its own cemetery. In the Farmhouse Museum, one of the oldest buildings, visitors have reported curtains moving on their own, display cases opening by themselves, and the feeling of being watched. In Fisher Theater, the spirit of a former drama teacher is said to be hanging around, with students even using her old wheelchair as a prop. The chair has been known to move itself around as if someone is in it. Lastly, all across campus, numerous reports have sprouted up concerning strange sounds, otherworldly fog coming out of nowhere, and objects shaking violently or moving on their own.
Am I the only one that is starting to see the pattern here of different colleges across all these states having a haunting situation going on? Maybe it's just me, but that's another pattern I'm starting to notice. Are these colleges have a lot of hauntings. It is said the college near me has a drama teacher that haunts it, just like this particular story here. So definitely something, again, I've heard in other case files, but intriguing nonetheless. We definitely sound like if you go to a college in any state, it is probably haunted, at least to some degree.
The Oakland Cemetery. The Oakland Cemetery in Iowa City was founded in 1843 and has become locally infamous for a terrifying local legend surrounding its wrought iron gates. The Black Angel statue overlooking the Feldevert family plot is said to have originally been gold until the passing of Teresa Feldevert, when it started to cry black tears. The entire statue is now black, and every attempt to restore the color has failed. Visit at your own risk, as it's said that a girl once kissed the feet of the statue and died 6 months later. Another boy, healthy and in high school, touched the statue and his heart stopped instantly. Several women have reported miscarriages directly after coming in contact with the statue. Also reported in the cemetery are strange lights in the sky and what looks like a ghostly angel floating silently through.
Now that is quite a spooky case file. Sounds to me like they need to remove that statue and put it up for safekeeping, because it doesn't sound right now like it's keeping anyone very safe at all.
The Villisca Axe Murder House. The Villisca Axe Murder House in Villisca was built in 1868 and later purchased by Josiah and Sarah Moore in 1903. Between midnight and 5 a.m. on June 10, 1912, all 6 members of the Moore family and their house guests, 2 young girls, were murdered by axe blows to the head. Due to lack of evidence and a mismanaged crime scene, the crime remains unsolved to this day. Residents and visitors report the disembodied sounds of crying, finding shoes filled with blood, lights turning on and off, and plenty more. One resident was sharpening a kitchen knife when, in his words, the knife floated and then stabbed him through the hand. His family moved out the next day and never returned. Also reported throughout the years are ghostly whispers at night.
I do apologize for the dog in the
blood dripping from the walls, and the dark silhouette of a man holding an axe seen standing over beds at night.
And once again, we have a high amount of trauma and a high amount of hauntings. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think that Iowa is definitely a state of mystery, from the Van Meter monsters and Bigfoots to the ghosts that tend to populate the state? Do you think it's a state of mystery for sure, or do you think we are yet again barking up the wrong tree? In the end, ladies and gentlemen, all you can do is look at the evidence, apply a little common sense, and you be the judge. We got to close it out. That's right, that's it for this episode of the Dark Wolf's Den Show for Wednesday, September 29th, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Ladies and gentlemen, the den may be closing, but don't you worry, the weekend fun has only just begun. That's right. Make sure you come back tomorrow, September 30th, 2021. I don't even know what day it is, ladies and gentlemen. Can you tell? 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, as I return with an all-new episode of the Ripon Rabbit Hole live show. That's right. We're going to be with the Dark Wolf's Den Show. We're going to be talking tomorrow about end times prophecies that have gone very, very wrong. Clearly they've gone wrong. We're all here to discuss it, right? That will be tomorrow, September 30th, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, right here on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, the Ripon Rabbit Hole. Then on Friday, October 1st, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, our buddy AJ the Ripon Rabbit will be back with the all-new episode of the Ripon Rabbit Hole live show. See, I say that so many times over and over and only announce mine once, so I get so used to announcing his, right? Which I don't mind. This episode is going to be about civil disobedience. There's a time and place for everything, especially when it comes to civil disobedience. And I don't know about you guys, but it just seems to feel to me like that time and place might be coming a lot sooner than others may think, right? All that and more coming up on Friday, October 1st, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Then on Saturday, October 2nd, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, he'll be back with an all-new episode about donating your body to science. AJ will be discussing all the ins, outs, ups, downs, and all the rounds of donating your body to science. Would you do that? I wouldn't. I'm be honest with you. I don't think science has that much interest in my body, but if you're on the fence about that, make sure you check out AJ's episode on Saturday, October 2nd, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. If only my tongue would work today. Isn't it bad when you talk for a living and your tongue decides it's done for the day, right? On Sunday, October 3rd, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. AJ will be back one last time to round the weekend out right with an all-new episode of Beat Eugene. Nobody was able to beat Eugene last round, and maybe, if you're lucky, you'll be the one to jump up and beat Eugene this time. If you want to try to give it a shot, make sure you come on over on Sunday, October 3rd, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central for Beat Eugene the 4th. And that doesn't end the weekend, or maybe it does. Maybe the next weekend starts early. I'm not entirely sure, but on Tuesday, October the 5th, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, exclusively in the Backstage Lounge on the RiponRabbitHole.com. Our buddy Champion Sports Nation will be hosting the Tuesday night video section. That's right. This month, he's going to be discussing the Masters of the Macabre. So come by for some fun, some music videos, some trivia. See how well you know your Masters of Macabre, and maybe you can take the championship belt away from Sandy B. That's exclusively in the Backstage Lounge on the RiponRabbitHole.com. That is RiponRabbitHole.com. That's right. You're also going to find, while you're over there, the Down the Rabbit Hole section. There are exclusive social media section. It seems today that the overlords have taken another step to ensure a majority of misinformation stays under platforms and kill the truth. So you won't have that over on the RiponRabbitHole.com, not Down the Rabbit Hole. So come on over and drop your truth there. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of AJ the Ripon Rabbit, Chick Mandela Effect, Michael Musco, Walt House, everyone involved with Ripon Common Sense Radio, as well as Tom Bayless for this amazing music in Red Shed Studios. Get down with it, Tom. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking for a custom soundtrack for your next project, make sure you check out Red Shed Studios. Links in the description. On behalf of all these folks, as well as our amazing mod team, my name is Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. And remember, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, stay awake, but dare to dream. That's right. Good night, everybody. How? Yeah. That's right.
Some things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever Oh, what a widow, a crystal spider. When the grass is green, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way. What a sinner is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion? I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
So I am a child of the 90s, a time that you may remember as being marked by moments of sheer terror and hopelessness, and yet the sense of optimistic possibility. On the one hand, we had grunge music in our ears, reminding us that life was short and the system was stacked against us and we were all gonna die, so what was the point anyway? But yet at the same time, we had hip hop artists reminding us that even though life was short and the system was stacked against us, we were in the position to make the kind of change that we wanted to see in the world. We had Y2K, which at the turn of the century meant that there was a good chance our phones and computers were gonna go dark, elevators were gonna come crashing out of the sky, and nuclear codes might accidentally launch a couple missiles. Sorry about that. But hey, good news, we had an obligation to party like it was 1999, and so we needed to find a solution. In the 90s, we were the birthplace of corporate scandal. Erin Brockovich was our poster child. We had class action lawsuits against big tobacco. We had the Enron scandal. At any moment reminding us that corporate America was really only out to make a buck off of our backs, and we'd be lucky to survive. And yet, somehow we were all going to live in incredible New York City apartments, making a great living wage, living with our best friends, and the cute guys from across the hall were going to be over all the time, just like it was on Friends. It was going to be incredible. We had choices. We could choose to live with hopelessness or choose optimism. Well, I chose optimism. And like a lot of good kids in the 90s who chose optimism and wanted to make the world a better place, but had no real plan for how I was going to do that, I went ahead and put off making a decision by declaring English as a major. But the good news was that in '99, even an English major could get a pretty good job coming out of college. And I remember sitting in my college apartment looking through the job boards that were being recruited at my university. The book was almost an inch thick. It had a pink cover and a black binding, and I can still smell the ink on the page. And as I looked through opportunity after opportunity, my optimism began to turn into hopelessness. Because while I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, I knew that I did not want to do anything that was in that book. I sat there and I looked And just as I almost closed the cover, the one job description jumped out at me. It said, the thing most team leaders talk about is the ability to make a difference in the lives of others. Well, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do that. And I could not wait for that interview. I marched into that interview with my shoulder-padded suit and my chunky heels and my Rachel Bob, and I worked really hard to get that job. And I got that job. And at the ripe old age of 21, I marched into the real world ready to make my mark by working at a trucking company. Now, if you had known me back in the 90s, you would have been surprised that this was my choice of career, because it wasn't really the glamorous industry that I'd been, dreaming about for the last decade. But the reality is that it was glorious. I had amazing relationships with the people I worked with in the office and on the road. I felt that my work was meaningful. I made sure that my drivers had a living wage. I got them home when they wanted to be home. Most importantly to me, I made sure that they had the tools and the resources and the support that they needed to operate safely. I felt like I got to have a positive impact on the environment, and I felt like the more I did well in this company, the more I was going to be able to help it grow and create greater impact for society. I was living the dream. I had it made. I had figured out how to hack the system. I had done it. I had figured out how I was going to make a decent wage, and I was going to make the world a better place. My soul was on fire. I loved that job. Until that one particular performance appraisal, a document which, for the record, I still have. It is covered in red ink and snot and tears and like every note of indignation I could come up with. Because while I was busy making things better for my drivers, apparently, according to my manager, I wasn't making the company enough money. And, it wasn't really my fault. I was just too soft-hearted, and I didn't understand how finance worked. But if I couldn't figure it out, I wasn't going to be able to keep my job. I went home that day, and I cried my eyes out. I sat on my big, yellow, fuzzy couch, the first purchase I had made with my adult big girl paycheck. And I felt so stupid because I didn't understand why business financials worked they did, why the way they worked the way they did. And I felt so naive for thinking that I would have figured it out in the first place. And I felt so hopeless because if I couldn't do it there, where was I going to do it? How was I going to leave a mark on the world if I couldn't do it there? Fortunately, that manager was in the minority of the people who worked at that company. And after 3 or 4 days of moping around the office in my ugliest flannel shirt, one of the other managers realized that I wasn't quite myself. And he pulled me into a room, picked me up, dusted me off, and reminded me why I loved that company and why I wanted to work there and why I wanted to make a difference in the first place. And I left that conversation thinking, well, if the reason that I can't do this is simply because I don't have the financial chops, well, that's an easy solution. And the next weekend, I went ahead and spent my time applying for business school. So here we are, 22 years, 3 major career changes, 2 businesses of my own, and 10,000 hours of obsessive research. And there is one thing that I know for sure. I know that it is possible for us to use business to make the world a better place. About a decade ago, one of my realizations was that if I was going to prove that it is possible for businesses to create purpose and social impact, that I was going to need some data. And so I started paying attention to what companies were doing that demonstrated an active desire to create healthy, effective, meaningful communities, or if they were just avoiding the sense of responsibility that comes with leadership. And I was able to quantify and ultimately score these companies. And then once I had the data, the next question became, well, what do we know about what that means for financials? What's the integration? Do businesses that create positive social impact, do they actually outperform the market? And the answer is yes. In fact, when you create a portfolio using just companies that create positive social impact, what I call the aspirational business model, they actually outperform the market by almost 30% as a portfolio. It's amazing. It is possible for businesses to create positive impact and profit. And then the numbers, it's not just that it's possible, it's powerful. Businesses that are in the top 25% of social impact, they actually outperform those in the bottom by almost 80% more net income. They make 80% more money than the people that do not. And they use it more effectively too, because they have 40% more return on equity. The financials are there. We do not have a false dichotomy between having businesses that make the world a better place and profit. But the best part is that these businesses, they're not using some fancy MBA strategy. They don't have a secret sauce that the rest of us are not privy to. And in fact, if we want to do this with our organizations, you can use these 5 cultures, competencies, and behaviors. It doesn't matter if you have 50,000 employees or 50 employees. The things that these organizations do are they hold themselves to a sense of purpose. They have accountability for the outcomes they want to see in the world. They create connection with their employees. They operate with integrity, and they communicate transparently. These are behaviors that just so happen to also make us happier people. And they work for our businesses too. So let me tell you what it looks like when we see organizations doing this. The first thing that we see is a sense of servanthood, purpose. Yes, you are trying to make money. You are also trying to offer a high quality product at a reasonable price. But what else are you trying to do, and why are you doing it? What are the values that you want people to demonstrate? What's the vision for where you want to go? Organizations that create positive social impact, they know the answers to these questions, and so do the people within their teams. They also hold themselves accountable, and they hold themselves accountable to their own behavior, firstly, but then also to asking, is the behavior that we're demonstrating actually driving the kind of impact that we want to see? If we're a pharma company and we want to see health outcomes, are we actually paying attention to the work that we do and whether it creates the kind of health outcomes we want to see? They create a sense of connection with their employees. This is about creating living wages, safe working conditions, meaningful work opportunities, which can be as simple as a sense of purpose within your organization, or thinking about the way your employees are giving ideas to you and how we bring those to life so that people feel connected to the work that they're doing. Diversity also plays in here. Do you have diversity of thought from the boardroom all the way down to the training room? Is everybody in your organization bringing new ideas and perspectives to life so that you can really think about the solutions you want to offer and whether or not you are doing it in the way that is best suited for your organization? They hold themselves to the highest ethical conduct, and not just thinking about the regulatory requirements that the government requires them to do, but understanding where are the unintended consequences in the organization? Where are there harms that are happening within the entity that are hidden under the rocks that are maybe being incentivized, and how do you eliminate those, and how do you address them within your organization? And the last thing that these organizations do is they communicate transparently. Not just to say, hey, we've got an issue that we're trying to address and we need your help and ideas, but also to listen to the communities that they're operating within to understand what are the solutions that people need and how do they innovate to bring those solutions to life. They create a sense of purpose, they hold themselves accountable, they connect with their employees, they operate with high ethical conduct, and they communicate transparently. It's not magic. This is what businesses are made to do. If I could go back and talk to that poor kid crying on the couch, or anybody else who's ever wondered how we actually steward our businesses, how we leverage those resources to make the world a better place, there are a few things I would tell her. First off, I would tell her that it is possible. She's not crazy. We can use business to make the world a better place. I would tell her that she's closer than she even knows, because the power in this work is in thinking about the people within our ecosystems and treating them with integrity and respect and caring. That's where the power comes in. I would encourage her that regardless of what position she's in, she is in a position of power to address these changes, not just from a managerial or leadership position, but from understanding what businesses is she going to advocate to bring into her community or to keep out. By thinking about where she spends her money and where she invests her hard-earned savings. By paying attention to the behaviors of the organizations that she supports. And by demanding good working conditions, not just for the people in her business, but for the people around the world who are producing the goods and services that she is consuming. Because we have access to that information. The last thing that I would tell her is that there's a lot of work to be done. Can you imagine if we were able to bring all of the resources of our corporate parties together to solving some of today's biggest challenges? It would be a game changer. What impossible thing would we do first? We could do it all. Sometimes that kid from the 90s still waffles a little bit between those feelings of hopelessness and that sense of optimism. And on those dark, sad days, I think we have to do it. The world cannot wait for us to figure out how we use corporate resources to make the world better. And on those optimistic days, days like today, I think I cannot wait for us to figure out how we can steward our corporate resources to make the world a better place. Because it is possible, it is powerful, and there are practical things that we can do every day.
It's remarkable to think that our planet may be the only place in the cosmos with life. Now, we all take our planet for granted, but I'm here to tell you that it's time to protect our precious planet. Because without it, we don't exist. I'm an environmental scientist, driven by a passion for our planet, but also by a saddening of what we're doing to it. I've dedicated my career to exploring solutions to environmental problems, particularly those faced by tropical forests. And this has enabled me to see just how our planet is a living, breathing masterpiece of nature. And my dream is that of a world where humans and nature can thrive together. My work has taken me around the equator, from Africa and Asia to the Amazon, where I've witnessed Earth's wonders, felt its power, but also its fragility. And of course, spending extended periods in tropical forests has certainly not come without its hiccups. I really have wrestled an anaconda. I've awoken in the night to find every inch of me and my hammock covered in ants. I've been simultaneously attacked by a bat, a swarm of bees, and a possum while wearing nothing but my underpants. I've lost flesh from my buttocks. Twice. And I've been stalked by this jaguar. And with all of these experiences has come a great respect of nature. Covered in ants, I knew the best thing to do was just to stay still and let all 150,000 of the colony just walk over me. Faced up by this wild jaguar, I stayed calm, and eventually he just sat down, and we stared at each other for about half an hour. But it's not just the scary moments that have inspired my love of nature. It's what I've learned about the natural world that has really sparked my passion. Indeed, I have learned that plants, animals, and all living things are vital for making our planet habitable. They gift us clean air, clean water, and nutrients. And they pollinate our farms, just like this hummingbird feeding on a banana flower. If we had to pay for all of the things that ecosystems do for us, it would cost us a staggering $46 trillion a year. And that's a scary number equal to half of our global economy. So thank you to things like these natural flood defenses provided by mangroves and the animals that pollinate our farms. And through my research, I have shown that without animals, forests struggle to regenerate because there is no one to disperse the seeds of the most important and largest trees. And this is crucial because forests are our first line of defense against dangerous climate change. And we learn from nature too. Countless technological advances come from the natural world. Velcro was inspired by plants. And new hydrophobic materials, like those on my coat here, get their surface structure from lilies. And this is what we call biomimicry. When professional swimsuits were redesigned to mimic the fine-scale structure of shark skin, they were banned after the 2008 Olympics when too many world records were shattered. So nature is amazing. Did you know that through their root networks, trees gift nutrients to one another? And it's the largest and oldest, and maybe the wisest trees that do the most giving. In essence, they are communicating. And trees aren't just really cool. They're sophisticated carbon dioxide hoovers. And it's not just trees. Recent science shows the importance of grasslands, soils, and even whales for locking greenhouse gas emissions out of our atmosphere. And if that wasn't enough, nature helps our health too. Scientists in the field are now unanimous that the more people spend time in nature, the happier they are, the lower their stress levels, and the physically healthier they are. Medical doctors have now even started prescribing a dose of nature. But the best thing about the natural world is when two species help each other. And this is called symbiosis. My favorite symbiotic relationship of all is that between the acacia tree and the acacia ant. The ant lives exclusively on the tree, which it fiercely defends. It even destroys seedlings on the forest floor that may compete with the tree for soil nutrients. In return, the ant receives food, shelter, and a place to lay its eggs. Together, the two species thrive, but alone, they are outcompeted. And we only exist because of symbiosis too. Our gut microbiome, that is all those microorganisms that live within our digestive tract, are vital for our immune system and our digestion. There are more bacterial cells in our bodies than there are human cells. And without them, we simply can't survive. But despite the fact that nature is the only reason we're here, scientists believe we're now at a crossroads. On one side, an environmental catastrophe where we do too little, too late. On the other, a hope that we might just be able to turn things around. Indeed, a realization that we have to. Now, I don't believe in a world for future generations where we continue to exist beyond the means of our fragile planet, using machines to suck greenhouse gas emissions out of the atmosphere. No, I believe in a world where humans can be humans, but we value and respect Earth's riches and harness them for the benefit of all of us. But our planet is suffering from its own pandemic. The actions of humans have been compared to that of a virus on its host. But actually, we're more like an asteroid. And as a result, scientists are concerned that Earth has entered its 6th mass extinction. And I probably don't need to tell you what happened the last time we had one of those. Earth lost the dinosaurs. So it's hard to overstate our impact on the planet. We're not on the verge of a crisis. It's already begun. The earth is warming. Forests are burning. And our homes are flooding. 1 million species are threatened with extinction, and we could be one of them. This century alone, 300 million people will be displaced by sea level rise. Last year, there were more climate refugees than there were fleeing conflict. Poverty, hunger, injustice, and inequality, as well as species extinctions, are set to get worse. So we need rapid action. And if the COVID pandemic has taught us anything, it's taught us that rapid action is possible if the cause is great enough. Well, Earth's pandemic is more than great enough, and the prosperity of our children and their children depends on what we do today. So here's my kids, ready for action and ready to see the world. Now, I'd like to think that, like me, they will see magnificent animals in the wild, breathe fresh air, and live generally healthy lives. But I fear that they may not. So we need to act now. But governments are simply not doing enough, and most nations are nowhere near meeting their climate targets. So as individuals, we all need to up our game. We need to wake up to the fact that we are over-consuming. It's mad to think that just half of us contribute 86% of all greenhouse gas emissions. We are consuming too much, and food is a big one. And this is important because food production is the largest driver of climate change and contributes a third of all of our greenhouse gas emissions. So what can we do? Well, we need to start looking at the impacts of our diets. This is actually a bit of a minefield. I'll explain. You may have heard that a meat-based diet has the highest environmental footprint, and this is true. Meat is so inefficient because it requires large areas of land for every kilogram of food produced. And as a result, meat production accounts for more greenhouse gas emissions than those from the entire transport sector combined, including planes. And beef is a particular issue because even your local cows were probably fed on feed grown on land that was previously forest. Not to mention the methane that cattle produce. And so the majority of emissions from meat are occurred when ecosystems are destroyed to make way for food, particularly tropical forests. And this is one of the reasons you may have heard bad things about palm oil. But even palm oil is more nuanced than you might think, because it's more efficient with the land, particularly compared to the alternative oils. And another fact that may surprise you, genetically modified foods are better for the environment because they're kinder on the land. And because they are tolerant to extreme weather events, they're also important in the fight against famine too. And when you think about the season of what we eat, for example, in the UK, out-of-season asparagus emits 18 times more than it does in season, and is not dissimilar from beef or lamb. And the nuance doesn't stop there. Bananas that travel by boat from Latin America have the same carbon emissions as those of broccoli grown in the UK. So I think we need to get food smart. There are fortunately a few general rules to help us to do this. I took these pictures on my supermarket shop. 12 apples. 6 from South Africa and 6 from here in the UK. A pretty easy decision. Out-of-season beans from Kenya or Morocco? I don't even know. So let's just keep it simple. Eating less meat is the surest way to reduce the impact of your diet, and is easier on your wallet too. Sourcing products sourced locally usually reduces their environmental footprint. And eating in season helps too. But unfortunately, our overconsumption goes way beyond that of just food. We all succumb to the temptations of fast fashion and the buy and buy more system. We all consume energy, polluting plastics and fossil fuels. So we can smarten up our consumption of all things. Grow your own, waste less, reuse things, repair things, buy and sell secondhand. We don't need to stop consuming, we just need to reduce our overconsumption. So if you're just starting out, try Meat-Free Monday, or buy less unnecessary crap October. And you can make yourself simple targets for our planet. Here's my Earth Smart Meter. It's just like the reward chart that my kids have on the fridge. And I call it a smart meter because 40% of people with a smart energy meter actually consume less energy. Yet, like my reward chart, all it does is show you your usage. So I'm on this journey with you, because we can all do better. And we need to start talking about Earth's pandemic. If we shout loud enough, we might just give world leaders no choice but to take real action. Tell your politicians to give us climate labeling on products, especially food. We label GM, so why not label its emissions too? And while you're at it, ask for a solar panel on every roof. If you own Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, all over the world, spread algorithms that promote the word about the environment. If you own a global corporation, put Earth's pandemic at the top of your agenda and use your power and influence to start an environmental revolution. If you can afford to go to space, how about we fix our planet too? So I leave you with the future generations of our planet. I'm making changes for them, and you can too. Everything we do, every day, makes a difference. So let's be more like the acacia ant and care for the very thing that provides for us. We have to, because life on Earth doesn't have another planet to go to. So now is the time to protect our precious planet. Thank you.
You know when they say that difficult roads often lead to beautiful destinations? Well, what if I was to say that it's actually courageous conversations that lead to the most beautiful destinations? In fact, if I may, I'd like to ask you all to stick with me and to trust me as we all dive into a courageous conversation together right now and see where it takes us. You see, 10 years ago, I completely lost my sanity. Stick with me. A few years after my mind became strong enough to let me remember that I'd been sexually abused as a child. And after landing the job of my dreams and becoming obsessed about this positive social impact I was going to create in this new role, an obsession which turned out to be the catalyst for this inner trauma that my body had been carrying to be released. I pushed my mind to the limit and ended up stood in the middle lane of a major motorway in northern Italy at rush hour, believing I was the chosen one. The one who'd been sent here to ease all of the world's suffering. Over the 6 months leading up to that point and riding this ever-strengthening wave of dopamine and adrenaline and ignoring all the warning signs from everyone around me that I was going way too fast, the grandiose ideas, the excessive spending, giving away my possessions and averaging just 2 hours sleep a night for weeks upon end. I ended up on that motorway in a state of pure, triple-filtered mania and psychosis, backing up the traffic for 5 to 10 miles and letting one car go at a time as I tried to force them to slow down. and follow your heart. I'd completely lost my sanity. In fact, my mind and my mood, it reached speeds and heights which exceeded Freddie Mercury's on stage at Wembley, or Ayrton Senna's on the streets of Monaco. And seriously, I can still picture the face of that perfectly Italian man in his red Fiat Punto at the front of the queue looking at me and thinking, what the hell is this guy on? And I don't blame him. I'd completely lost my mind. Now, we all know what goes up must come down, right? Well, take a breath, because what felt like a split second later, after the police officers arrived, who of course I tried to recruit as my new personal security officers, I was fast-tracked to a psychiatric ward, strapped down to a bed and pumped full of drugs to make me slow down and sleep and eat and repeat, just to get me to a stable level where I could be escorted back to the UK. Fast-tracked to the wards back in London, getting the diagnosis of bipolar disorder, both a blessing and a burden, and a conversation for another time. Then finally being discharged, I found myself in the deepest crevasse you can imagine. Black as the pit from pole to pole, and chained to my mattress by my own mental shackles, as if that same massive energy that I'd been pumping out into the world for each of those 6 relentless months came right back at me, pushing and pulling me into my mattress in equal measures, leaving me completely debilitated, ashamed, broken. After believing I was the chosen one and having so much conviction pumping through my veins, here I was with 0 conviction in any single thought or any single word that was leaving my lips. I couldn't trust my own brain anymore, and I was trapped. Saw no point, and I'd lost all hope. And in my darkest hour, after months of being bedbound and disconnected from the rest of the world, I felt that I had no other option to escape this fell clutch of circumstance than taking a slow drive and having a good look over the edge of the particular bridge that I'd chosen. Yet in that same hour, with the car keys nowhere to be found, hidden out of love and preempted concern by my incredible wife, who knew me better than I knew myself at that time, I found myself face to face with Grace, my counsellor, my second lifesaver, crying, talking, listening, reflecting, and after some time, speaking, the single determining factor which not only kept me here, but has led to me speaking to you now. Okay, let's take a breath. Courageous conversations lead to the most beautiful destinations. But before we take this conversation any further, I do need to clarify a few things. Number one, I am not the chosen one. Sorry to disappoint you. I'm not here to preach. I tried that on the motorway and it didn't end well. I'm not here to fix you. In my experience, most people don't want to be fixed. They just want to be seen, and they just want to be heard. I'm not here to suggest that any of this is easy. Brené Brown has it spot on when she says that vulnerability is our greatest measure of courage. Absolutely right. And lastly, I'm not here to simplify, undermine, compare or contrast your pain and struggles with mine. Ultimately, you're the one who you spend 100% of your life with. And none of us will ever truly understand the intricacies of your own adversity. Instead, I'm simply here to be your wingman, your teammate, and to stand alongside you. To advocate, champion, and reinforce the power of speaking up when we're suffering, and to throw out a few life rafts to those of you who can't see a way through the storm. And before we move on, to also give you the advice that I know you'd be giving your younger self, or the people you love the most if you knew they were struggling. That you've got this. What you're dealing with right now will all make sense in time to come, I promise you. And lastly, to not let anyone else hold the pen when writing the story of your life. You got it? Perfect. So, I'm having these one-to-one conversations with my counselors, my family, and my friends, none of which were had without tears or fear on my part, or patience and empathy on theirs, to reflect on and rewrite the story that I kept on telling myself, that I was useless, an embarrassment, and a burden on everyone around me. And clearly I had some enduring to do, patient suffering, which was put to the test over the next 5 long years, as I had to completely strip it all back and start again, to start trusting and loving myself again, to put myself first when I needed to accept help when it was offered, and above all else, to shut out the noise, to listen to my heart and focus on the things which really matter most in the long run. And with this renewed intentionality and keeping things much more in balance, it started to pay off. The clouds lifted, the colour returned, and once again I was looking to the future with passion, hope, energy, and optimism. And when the questions were asked by others, I found myself speaking openly about my experiences, knowing that by doing the opposite and hiding everything that I'd been through would have only kept me chained to that place of shame and feeling exhausted. And I was done with feeling exhausted. And every time I did, every single time I spoke honestly about what I'd been through, whether it was one-to-one or to bigger audiences when asked, 3 incredible things started to happen. I felt much lighter, as if the shame on my shoulders was lifted. I built an even greater support network around me, my dream team. But most importantly, just by going first and showing some vulnerability on my part, I found that I was giving permission for others to speak up about their own pain and their own struggles. From my closest friends struggling with their sense of purpose and looking for a new direction, or my peers looking to minimize the anxiety and the overwhelm that they found themselves in, or even distant acquaintances reaching back out to reframe their health or relationship issues, I realized time and time again that I was merely providing the safe space for them to speak up and for them to find and vocalize the answers that they already had within them. I felt like I'd discovered a superpower. And call it serendipity, but at the same time, the words of Viktor Frankl came into my life. When suffering finds meaning, it ceases to be suffering. Words which left me speechless and ignited an epic journey of discovery to not only find the meaning in my own suffering, but to play my part to help others to do the same. When suffering finds meaning, it ceases to be suffering. Meaning which is so often found in the darkest of places, yet so often lights the way through the tunnel when we can't see a way through. A meaning which acts as a lighthouse to guide and anchor us to a place of calmness and stillness when the waters inevitably rage again in the future. But here's the thing. Finding the meaning in our suffering is one thing, but having the courage to talk about it and to act upon it is another. So let's talk about courage for a second before we finally head to this beautiful destination just over the horizon. Courage. Strength in the face of pain or grief. The ability to do something that frightens us. If you're a human being, the chances are that you're going to be presented with many moments of pain and grief, and many moments that frighten you as we travel through this breathtaking mental adventure that we're all on together. Many challenges which we'll have to tackle both alone and together, or more often than not, alone together. But let me remind you that without these challenges, we'll never know whether we are warriors. I'm here to remind you that you are a warrior. You've already earned your place alongside Hercules himself. We all have. We all have. We are all courageous. And so often we just need to be reminded of it. And speaking of warriors, we finally reached this gladiatorial destination that we've been journeying towards. In fact, this isn't just a beautiful destination. This is an oil painting, and you're welcome to get as high off these fumes as you like. And this painting, this backdrop, this canvas, it starts in the arches of the Colosseum. See, exactly 5 years on from standing on that motorway, with 5 years worth of inspiring and courageous conversations behind me, I started thinking, what if I was to create a huge platform to share my story on an even greater scale in the hope of giving even more hope to others? And what if I was to bring my story full circle by incorporating Italy somehow? But this time, instead of standing on a motorway, which was never the way to go about delivering a message, let's be honest, I was to run from Italy back to the UK and use it as the platform from which the power of speaking up when we're suffering could be shown to thousands more people around the world. And just like that, Rome to Home was born. With a year's preparation to get my mind and my body in the best shape possible, here I was, back in Italy, but this time in the glorious city of Rome, ready to take on this truly life-affirming, solo and self-supported running adventure from the Colosseum back to the London Eye. A journey of over 1,200 miles, which I had to take on, and a painting which I had to paint, not just because Rome to Home had such a great sound to it, but to bring this Dan-defining 5-year chapter full circle and to test whether the meaning and the courage that I'd been gifted from my experiences were as strong as I believed they were. And before I knew it, it was time to bring this painting to life. From that glorious golden sunrise beaming through the arches of the Colosseum, and that immediate feeling of lightness as the weight of the past 5 years was released and replaced with pure emotion as I set off towards the Vatican, to the sun-kissed and sweet-rolling landscape of Tuscany and Siena, then up and over the spine of Italy and onto the Italian Alps, game ready to climb up and over the great St. Bernard Pass with Mont Blanc in the distance, dropping down to Lake Geneva, then up and out of Switzerland, then putting the afterburners on through France and Paris and taking a breath at the top of the Eiffel Tower, and then on to the English Channel with a few laps on the ferry, ready for that final blast over the Seven Sisters on the south coast, and on to London for those breathtaking final few miles along the banks of the River Thames to bring it home, surrounded by nothing but love and light and warmth and gratitude and shimmering champagne with everyone who shared that final day with me. It was beautiful. It wasn't all smooth sailing. I was tested both physically and mentally. But it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And you know that this adventure, it represented something so much bigger than myself. Yes, this was a personal pilgrimage, a journey of spirited significance and a celebration of my recovery. But much more than that, it was an adventure which I took on to demonstrate and celebrate the beautiful destinations where courageous conversations can take all of us if we find the courage and support each other to have them. And I'm not just talking about physical destinations, new, emotional, and for some, spiritual destinations filled with freedom and lightness and opportunity and a renewed sense of connection both to ourselves and the wider world around us. Oh, and apparently, Rome to Home also played its part to show a few people how to slow down and follow their hearts. It's funny how things turn out sometimes. Hey, look, these embers are burning low, and we'll have to hit the trails together sometime for me to tell you about the unbelievable moments of generosity, friendship, and many moments of magic I experienced over those majestic 65 days. So for now, let me just leave you with this, to allow yourself to imagine where your courageous conversations could take you. By courageously speaking up when we're suffering, with those who you know will provide the safe space for you to do so. Whether it's with your counselor, your coach, your colleagues, your family, your friends, your barber, your bartender, at your club nights, or high up on a mountain height, just one-to-one with me. You'll not only feel lighter and lift the weights that you've been carrying around on your aching shoulders for far too long. You'll not only realize that putting yourself first when you need to is in fact one of the most selfless things that you can be doing for others. You'll not only develop even greater courage to trust yourself and to follow your heart when you don't know which road to take in the future. You'll not only find yourself in new and beautiful destinations with the sun on your face, the wind on your back, and air in your lungs. I promise you. But above all else, by courageously speaking up when we're suffering, you'll give permission for others to speak up about their own suffering. And for me, there is no greater meaning or power than that. Thank you.
As someone who has been in the healing arts for many, many years, well, for some years, I am an observer. Those of us who are in the healing arts, we are observers of the patterns that mystify us in why do we become ill? Why do we break down? What helps us to become better? I mean, we are great mysteries to each other. And I find it so interesting that for all the years that we continue to study us, that we are such mysteries, which should tell us right off the bat that we continue to open places within ourselves, that we ourselves, as we are the observers, that we are continuing to learn how to observe, and that we as human beings are continuing to find places to observe. Let us say that the world behind our eye is our new frontier, and that we have become intrigued with ourselves in a way that other generations have not. That this is the new frontier. We are the new frontier. And so observing, for example, why we become ill, why we don't heal, has a different meaning than if that question were asked before World War II. The depth to which we now look at ourselves and the depth to which we're asking that question is a hologram compared to how once upon a time they asked and they were maybe looking for an infection. We are looking for a story, a narrative, reasons that are a complexity. When I've been working with people now for 3.5 decades, and as an observer of people, there's so many, many things I could share with you, but I've narrowed them down for obvious reasons, and to choice. I want to emphasize the power of choice. And perhaps there was a time when we wouldn't even talk about it, but we have to talk about that today. Because choice is a fundamental power of the human experience. We need to put choice as an authority, as a power that is so huge that if I ran the world, this is where you should say, That's a good idea. But if I ran the world, I would make studying the power of choice part of every school curriculum. That everyone should learn that the power of the choices you make have infinite consequences. From the littlest choice to something that is great, big, huge. And that here's the paradox. You have no idea what a little choice is or a big choice. What we are used to doing is believing that a big choice is an obvious one. Buying a house, getting married, getting divorced. In fact, those are your small choices. The choices that actually matter when it comes to your health, when it comes to healing, when it comes to positioning yourself, empowering yourself, are the tiny ones that are the choices, I should say, that you think have the least power, that you make in the privacy of your own company, that perhaps you think have that are the most insignificant. I have found repeatedly, are the most powerful choices of your life. The most powerful. That have the most powerful impact on your biology, on your on your soul, on your sense of who you are, on your well-being, on your whole life map. Now, I'll tell you something else, that these are the types of statements that are dicey to make, because if someone said, I want you to bring proof of this in a basket, I couldn't do it. But if you listen with your heart and your gut and see if it doesn't settle well there like good chicken soup. So I'm going to take you through choices. The kind of choices that if you came to me and said, I don't feel well. I don't feel well. And I have chronicness. And I go from one chronicness to another. I have chronicnesses. I am always a curmudgeon. Nothing makes me happy. I am always complaining, and I ache, and I'm exhausted. I almost make unexhaustion, but I don't. And I almost like my life, but I actually don't. And I almost can love someone, but not really. I almost make it there, where I actually feel love, but I don't actually really feel it. I think I feel it, so I think feel. And every now and again, I kind of get a love high, but it doesn't last. I take 2 aspirins, it passes. But then I think maybe it is, but then it's not. But then it is, but it almost is, but not quite. So I go to a therapist. Is this love? But if I try hard enough, but maybe. So I find someone to blame. Chronicness. There's never been people like us who have these issues. We're extraordinary in our issues. And as I go into this, here's another thing that is unique about us. And put this in your chicken soup belly. We are born knowing certain things. We're wired for it. It's in our instinct. It's in our spiritual instincts. It's in our DNA. It's in our soul DNA. We are born knowing that choice is powerful. Choice is the most powerful thing we got going for us, and we know it. And that's the reason why we're terrified to make a choice. I'll ask somebody, where do you want to go for dinner? I don't know. Pick a restaurant? No, can't even pick a restaurant. People are terrified of making choices. Terrified of the consequence you choose. Terrified of being held accountable for a consequence. Well, I don't know what I want to do. I'll think about it. The morning, the day, your mind gets the day shift, your heart gets the night shift. Your mind says, well, I think. Your heart says, I feel. And you don't let the two of them talk to each other. Because if they do, then you actually have to do something. Choice terrifies people. So most people will do anything to postpone making choices. So I'm going to help you out. And we're going to go through a list of choices that matter, that make a difference. The first choice is the decision to actually live an integrous life. And when I say make a choice to do that, it's the kind of thing I mean. I don't mean, well, I live a good life. No. I'm talking full scale. I'm going to walk the way I talk. I'm actually going to do it. I'm going to live a life of integrity. I'm going to, never mind this speak my truth, I'm actually going to tell the truth. I'm going to live with integrity. I'm going to make my choices according to what I say I believe I'm going to live. I will not, and what this means is that I'm not going to betray myself. I'm not going to compromise myself. I'm not going to put myself in a position or put myself in any circumstance, or if I'm in a circumstance, I'm getting out. Or I won't force another person. I won't force another person to be in a circumstance in which I know they're uncomfortable in order to please me. I won't hold another person captive because that has no integrity. I will not do that. Now, let me tell you something. Liars don't heal. Liars don't heal. So you can eat all the wheatgrass you want, and you could do all this stuff with seeds and vegetables. But an honest person who eats cat food will go further than you. Dishonest people, people who lie, people who have moral crises and do not get it, people who blame others for things that they do and they know it, people who make choices and they know another person's going to pay for the consequence of that choice and they are conscious of it. They know for a fact that they're saying something that is not true. And they know another person's going to be hurt by that. People who deliberately say things to hurt somebody. Believe you me, your body knows you did that. Your mind knows you did that. Your heart and soul knows you did that. So you did that. So don't tell yourself, under any circumstances, that the problem with your depression comes from your childhood. Don't go there, knock it off, and make the decision. The decision to live an integrous life means get this act together. So it's not as simple as saying I'm a good person. Knock it off. This is major league. Second, are you taking notes? You make a decision. I will not pass my suffering on, but my wisdom. I make the decision not to pass on my suffering, but my wisdom. So that from the years of your life, you make the decision, the gifts that I have to pass on, I either pass on the wisdom I've learned, or I will pass on at this stage the suffering. Oh, my poor life. Or go harvest the wisdom. What do you want to pass on? The sludge or the wisdom? That's up to you. Everybody has a choice, and everybody can pass on, but again, it's the choice. It's the choice. We all have that. And believe me, I am not saying we don't have grief, we don't have pain. But if we look at life, there are certain things that all spiritual, the great religious traditions, the great spiritual holy traditions have in common. And one of the lessons of these traditions, one of the great learnings, is that life will never be that wonderful, rich thing that we want it to be, which is what we call fair. It will never be that. It will never be, well, that's why this happened. I had someone tell me one time, well, if I only knew why this happened to me. And I said, and what difference would that make? What if God sent an angel and the angel said, what do you want? I mean, you've been banging around down here. What do you want? I want to know why this happened and this happened and this happened. What if the angel said, because it did? Now what? Now here's the thing. Some of the grief and injuries that have happened to people are so horrible, it's unbelievable. And the truth is, nothing can make that go away. Nothing can make that better. And the model of healing that we have to have is a model that says healing is not about ever forgetting those things. It's not about forgetting. It's about looking at what has happened to us and saying, this will never defeat me. It will never defeat me, but I will not live in this. I have to somehow turn this into my source of wisdom, but I will not live in woe.